Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore.
As I see it, there are two main roads in life. There is the wide road, which, let's say, is full of admiration, applause, recognition, awards. But then there's the narrow road, which is probably harder to walk, less glamorous at times, or most of the time. It's often rocky, has more uncertainty. But in my experience, it's the one that leads to deeper contentment and more genuine fulfillment and peace of mind. And that's kind of what I'm going to explore a little bit today. The title for today is The Narrow Road to Real Fulfillment. And I'm wondering, even as I share those two different roads, as you're listening to me, which road do you feel that you're on? And most achievers, the kind of people that I suppose that I mostly work with, they often unconsciously, in my experience, choose the wide road. Now, they'll tell you sometimes that they're on the narrow road, but if you look at their behavior, look at how they think, what they focus on, what they stress about, what you'll actually really see is that they're on the wide road. And again, it's often unconscious. So you'll see that really underneath it all, they're chasing validation, they're chasing results, they're chasing admiration, they're chasing wealth, they're chasing money. And that is usually why, ultimately, it will leave them restless, confused, because they won't feel the way they thought they were going to feel when they eventually get with that thing that they're chasing. Plus also, unfortunately, they'll realize that actually it's empty, and they'll keep chasing more, thinking that maybe I need to get more of this thing, then I'll feel better. They get a hit, but it'll leave them very, very quickly. It's a bit like eating a kind of an empty type of a product with no real nutrition. You get a hit, but then it's empty. Now, the key point I guess I'm going to make for you to consider as you're listening is that real fulfillment doesn't come really from chasing external success. It comes from an inner alignment of things like purpose, selfless contribution, and really feeling fully alive. Feeling fully alive. Ultimately, in my experience, that seems to be what everybody wants, even though they might have different ways of saying it. Now, they think by getting on the wide roads those external things that I've mentioned, that they will feel alive when they get those things. They'll have admiration, they'll have awards, they'll have achievements, they'll have money, they'll have the big house. Then they get confused. And that's been my experience in my own life. And it's very much my experience in working with highly successful, ambitious people. Now, a couple of key points here is that, yes, the narrow road is difficult, but it is ultimately much more freeing. And it allows you to live with what I think are priceless things, such as a clear mind, an unburdened heart, and a lot more courage to make an impact, to do the things that matter, and to live a higher life. Now, there are clues all around us. And obviously, I think a lot of the time when people hear some of this material or content or ideas, they will resonate with it. Viktor Frankl, who wrote the very profound book, Man's Search for Meaning, was obviously a phenomenal human being who made a difference with his life in such a big way. Prisoner of war in World War II. But he also found that success and happiness can't be pursued directly. They must ensue as byproducts of something greater than us, something greater than you. Abraham Maslow, renowned psychologist, in studying people that he would have seen as highly functioning, getting people who got the most out of life, he'd also made a big impact. He called them self-actualizers. And what he found that they had in common, in simple terms, was that they lived beyond themselves. They absorbed life deeply. They pursued growth. but they really contributed as well to causes that were greater than themselves. They weren't as self-focused or self-centered as maybe the majority. And he's called these people self-actualizers. And that's where the whole self-actualization pyramid that Maslow is famous for came from. So in my experience, many leaders and achievers chase the wide road unconsciously because ultimately society has kind of conditioned us to believe that that is the way life works. So we end up always achieving, always pursuing and adding more, hoping that fulfillment will show up. But then we get confused and we wonder, oh, why do we feel empty? Why don't I feel the way society told me I would feel? I've got the money, I've got the business, I've got the partner, I've got the husband or wife, I've got the kids, got the big house, I've got the holiday. Why do I feel stuck, empty, not alive? And part of the problem, as I've discussed on this podcast before, is that it depends on what your focus is and what you value. And it's very important and highly, highly valuable to interrogate your inner world to see, hang on a second here, what do I really value and why? And is it delivering to me what I'm looking for really? Or am I chasing a moving target? Am I chasing a moving horizon? And the horizon, which is, let's just say the horizon is maybe your goals, what you want. The reality is that once you get there, you think it's going to make you happy, but the reality is that horizon moves. So I'm sure as you're listening to this, you will kind of go, oh no, that's true. Because it is true. It's universally true that, when I get there being the horizon or the goals, or when I get the business to this level, when I sell it, when I get a better body, when I, whatever it is for you, something that your mind is telling you, when I get there, then I'll be happy. The reality is you get there, you might get a momentary hit, but it won't last long. Why? Because your mind, which is a more monster, it always wants more, will move the horizon, will move the line out to, so, oh, no, actually when I get there, then I'll be happy. And it's just this carrot hanging like in front of your face thinking, oh no, keep chasing the carrot, get the carrot, let's go for a different carrot. Now, I have had many, many clients that I've helped over the 25 years of doing my work where from everybody else's perspective, they would have been seen as somebody who had everything. But they're sitting in front of me or we're talking because they feel flat, they feel stuck. And part of it, really huge part of it, was understanding on the inner side what I'm talking about here today. And again, like in simple terms, it's simple to say, it's not so easy sometimes to kind of poke at it, uncover really what's driving you from inside. But any of my clients who have shifted from focusing as much on themselves, self-centered, self-focused, to actually going, hang on a second here, they reoriented themselves in a way to probably what's more you could call a selfless purpose, that they focus on something bigger than themselves. They focus on giving more than getting. They focus on making an impact more than what they can achieve, even though they can be very much aligned. And what you'll see when somebody kind of centers themselves in selfless purpose, where in a way they're serving life as opposed to serving themselves more, what happens is their energy, their creativity, and their sense of meaning comes alive, and then they actually feel more alive. If I go back to the two roads, in many ways, actually, the wide road is easy. It's predictable. It's smooth. It's full of signposts of success to a degree. But for most people that I know, it doesn't take them where you really want to go. And the narrow road looks harder at first. But as you proceed along with it, it does start to get easier and wider, and it does lead ultimately to real freedom, which I think really most people probably listening to this particular podcast, if you're here, that's really probably what you ultimately deep down want. We just think that, to get freedom, I need to get this, this, and this. And it's not that those things don't matter, like money or whatever you think is important in terms of having good health. They're all really important. But ultimately, if you're looking for fulfillment, if you're overly attached to them mentally, that's usually the problem. And I suppose here's the paradox when I talk about the two roads. When you walk the narrow road, success often follows you anyway. But it's more of a byproduct of your approach, not the target. And that is the paradox, which can be, in my experience, difficult to understand, difficult to remember, And ultimately because society is kind of pointing you in a different direction into the wide road, not the narrow road. Just a little plug before I get into some questions for you to consider as we close out. You may or may not know, I have a weekly email that's been going since about 2008. I send out a short email designed to be read in 60 seconds or less every Monday morning, probably when you need it most. Something random for my life or my work, something to do with business, life, your mind. If you're not on it, maybe worth checking it out. You can go to my website, ShaneCraddock.com. Check it out. So back to you. What about you, as they say? Are you chasing fulfillment on the wide road, do you think? Hoping that external success will eventually fill you up? And maybe because you're doing that, a good indicator of that maybe you're doing that is that you will often feel down about where you are. I should be further along, or I'm comparing it, but I'm not really there yet. That's a good indicator that you are on the wide road. And also look at your behavior. Watch it, observe yourself over the next few days. What do you really value? Like for example, are you worrying about? Are you worrying about money, about recognition, about not getting where you want to go? And then also bringing it really down to short-term focus, like where right now in your life might you be postponing contentment until you arrive somewhere, until you get there? And again, this is very much an inner thing, but it's very, very common. You're not alone. It's all too common. But what would happen, or what would it look like to step onto the narrow road that I'm talking about and consider aligning more with purpose beyond yourself, with something bigger than you, a cause greater than just our own petty little goals? Because from my own experience, and I've spent a lot of time on that wide road. Let's just be honest about it with you. It's like I've been on that wide road because I too thought that's what it was all about. But what I realized over 25 years, actually 30 years longer since I'm on this journey, and then working with a lot of really, really great people, is that fulfillment isn't a future destination. It's actually a state. It's a state of being. And that state you create more when you live from purpose, from presence, and from what you give in terms of contribution. So maybe as a practical action to consider, this week, choose one area where you've been chasing more in the way I was talking about earlier. And instead of asking, what can I get from this? Ask, what can I give? And just as an experiment, see what happens. But pay attention perhaps to a possible shift in your energy. So to close out, the wide road wins applause. Yes, it does. But the narrow road gives you something much more valuable and lasting in my mind. And that is your peace of mind. That's it for this week. Ciao for now.